Welcome, everybody. It's my great privilege to present the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella. Satya has been the CEO for 2.5 years, but it's been 24 years, I think, since you've been at Microsoft. 24 years is a long time. 1992. It was not legal for people to go on the internet as just common citizens. Al Gore hadn't passed the Gore Act, which is what got him in trouble when he took credit for inventing the internet, but it did provide access. Bill Gates hadn't yet written the memo. Now you've taken over a company that's totally dominated by connectivity. Let me start with the big question we've been talking about at the Ideas Festival so far, is that all of that will lead to an artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence will take our jobs and we'll have some frightening new future. Do you believe in that scenario?
First of all, it's great to be at the Ideas Festival because you got straight to the point. I mean, quite honestly, it's such a privilege to have a chance to sort of breathe the air, soak the atmosphere where you're celebrating ideas, and to know that you're in safe ground. That means any bad idea of mine will also be at least celebrated for a few minutes. And it's just a privilege to be part of this. I wrote a piece just yesterday on AI because the way I came at it, Walter, was I've been thinking a lot about, as creators of machine intelligence and artificial intelligence, what are the design principles? What's the design sensibility that we need to have as we create these applications or platforms? Aside from Asimov, no one has actually said, here are some design guidelines for a software engineer who's creating AI. And I felt like the real thing today that we need is those guidelines for the creators. And when I thought about that, the first thing I said, wow, we have a choice to make, for example. So as creators, we can decide how we design them. So I fall in the camp of how do we create AI to augment the human capability, enhance the human experience. So I fall into that camp. So then after that, I sort of said, let's go take it one click down and say, what are some of the things that one needs to do to build into AI so that the human welfare, quote unquote, is front and center? That means algorithmically, you need to be able to infuse into AI things like trust, basically the ability to have transparency in how it works, to be able to take back control. And then most importantly, how do you even infuse into the AI you create human values of empathy? So I thought about that, and that's what I wrote. But one of the things that I also got to was, which kind of gets to the question you asked, what do humans need to do in a world where AI exists? We can't sort of deny it. So one of the things which I think will still be scarce, even in an AI-rich world, would be empathy, curiosity, the ability of humans to be able to explore things which are non-linear. And it's fine for AI to win a game of Go. It's a fantastic achievement, or to be able to get to high-quality speech recognition, which we have now, or image recognition. But it's not the same as being able to do what humans do today when they're at their creative best, or they're at their empathetic best. And education, because what does it mean to give ourselves the skills to be able to, in fact, ride this AI wave versus be afraid of it?
But when people say we need the skills to ride the AI wave, they say we have to teach engineering, we have to teach coding. I'm hearing you say we have to teach creativity, we have to teach empathy, we have to teach the things the humanities teach us. Do you think that in the future we should be training our kids to do what machines can't do?
I think that that's one avenue, for sure, which is in a world where, let's just take the following. It's, in fact, one of the use cases I just recently came across was someone who is an airplane engine mechanic started saying, okay, I want to do my job better, or how can I do my job better? One of the things that they're now using is a HoloLens, which has the ability to, for example, put holographic output that is superimposed on top of the engine, where the expertise of someone who is remote can be brought, and now you feel so much more proficient. So here is someone who's not as skilled as perhaps the engineer back is in fact able to do more complex operations than ever before. And the fact that connectivity, the fact that things like image recognition, which is fundamental to how these holograms get superimposed on an analog world, work, is in fact giving people more skills and more superpowers. So I think you're right. Teaching people more diverse set of subjects beyond STEM could in fact become more important.
Good for us humanists. You've said just now about augmenting intelligence rather than just pure artificial intelligence, and you've talked about ways just now that machines can work with people. Do you think that the quest of a company like Microsoft should be creating technology that replaces humans, or creating technology that partners with humans?
I, for sure, am focused on technology that partners with humans. It doesn't mean that some of this technology does not replace some of the human activity that we do today. That's sort of the distinction. But I do want technology that is fundamentally going to bring out the best in us, give us that productivity gain, give us the avenues to be more creative, give us to have the impact that we all seek to have in the world. That's definitely what I want us. Like, for example, one of the things that we're very enthused about is Cortana, which is something that Yuri talked about, which is agents are definitely, like the web, I think it's the third runtime. If you sort of said PC operating system was sort of the beginning of personal computing, then we had the web. What is the new runtime to me is this runtime around agents, personal assistants. And the idea of the personal assistant for me is, it's not about replacing my administrative assistant, actually. It is, in fact, giving me my time back, where in all this abundance I have of compute power, what I don't have is the attention span, perhaps, to be able to really live a full life, to be able to enjoy every moment. But if I could have an assistant that in fact knows me, knows my context, knows the world, and can help me, that is helping me.
You just said a moment ago, though, that you'd be creating technology that replaces some of what humans do, takes over of what some of humans do. The argument that's gone on for 200 years, ever since the Luddites were smashing the looms, is that technology will create fewer jobs. If technology makes us productive, will there be more jobs or fewer jobs in the future?
Look, there is no question that with every new technology, there is massive displacement that we have had to deal with. It is true in the Industrial Revolution. It's going to be true in this digital age or AI age. And an argument can be made that in the past, there was enough time for the person being displaced to, in fact, retire so that their children could get skilled in something else and find a job. Right? After all, we've seen some of the biggest displacement or migration from the agrarian economy to the service economy of the modern United States. And that has been a generational shift as opposed to happening within a generation. And so therefore, I think we might have to deal with this much more than we have dealt with in the past. So then my answer to that, or at least my one solution to that is that means this entire notion that somehow I'll go to school, I'll get educated in a skill, and I'll get a job, and that's it. And I'll be in that job. I think those days are over. We will have to deal with, as a society, as an economy, reskilling on a constant basis. We see that even in high tech. When we look at, for example, one of the biggest things that I'm going to probably push is how do I teach software engineers some of these new techniques to be relevant going forward.
What will Microsoft do to help reskill our society? Will you create products and services, and LinkedIn, tie that in for that?
For sure. That is, in fact, one of the things that I think a lot about. And Yuri touched on this, which I was thinking about, which is we sort of said there's $1 trillion of surplus or created every 5 years now. And the consumer internet has been an amazing thing in the last 10 years. But you look at the productivity stats and the job growth stats, they're pretty stagnant. And so the question I've been asking myself is, whether it's maybe the way we measure productivity or what have you, but nevertheless, how can digital technology, in fact, lead to more jobs? The question is there going to be a dividend of digital technology that is much more evenly spread between professions, between countries? And in that context, I start, in fact, with how do we enable people to be more creative? What tools can we build to be able to learn, but actually apply that learning to create? That is at the fundamental pursuit of LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is not just about having your profile and finding a job, but it is about being able to find your economic opportunity. And then knowing what skills you need to acquire in order to find that economic opportunity. And that's definitely the pursuit.
One of the things we've seen over the past year, culminating with the Brexit vote last Thursday, is a sense of rebellion against, trade, immigration, but also technology, and that it's displacing people who used to get up, as you said, get a career, show up at work, and be secure. I heard you talking to Governor Romney earlier today, just in personal conversation, about whether or not this is something that technology is doing or something that policy decisions we make can fix. Tell me what you think.
Yeah, here's how I come out at it. Just like the AI topic, where I think there's a responsibility we have as technology companies to have a set of design principles that lead us to create AI that is in help of humanity. I think that we also have to have the responsibility, first, as companies, as businesses, to create economic opportunity. For example, as a multinational company, we have 55% of our revenues are global. I don't think you can participate as in all of these countries and not create local economic opportunity. In fact, every country I go to, I was very recently in Asia, traveled 6 countries in sort of 9 days, and the first thing that I focus on is what's the economic opportunity locally we have created, whether it's the local startups that are getting leverage from our cloud, whether it's the small business that's getting more productive, whether the public sector organization locally is able to do things more efficiently because of what we do. It is so important for us to create that surplus locally in order to have a global business, because I think if you don't, and all you do is rent collection, that's not a stable way to do business globally. Then I believe the same responsibility also lies in our politicians, because I think we as America are better off, and so is every nation. But let's talk about sort of the real beacon of democracy and progress, that is the United States. We need to be able to make the case for both addressing the inequities of our society and the responsibility we have in a globalized world. We can't pit one versus the other. Because if the political discourse is about one versus the other and choose, in the United States, then I think that's just got bad ramifications for the rest of the world. So people like me and my company, we've got to know how to be global citizens and contribute globally. But I also think that the political class in the United States and the political discourse in the United States has to get to a level of sophistication where we are able to deal with both sides of the issues, because there's no denying that globalization has not led to dividends that have been spread equally. So those are policy choices. They're policy issues. Let's implement those policies better next time.
In other words, spread it more equally
That's
so that
correct.
there's not a division. You mentioned a moment ago, and this would be a way to help with the economy and empowering people, that you should help create a maker's economy. What do you mean by that, and how is Microsoft doing that?
Yeah, this is, you can call it my obsession. I look at it and say, look, I think we are well served today in terms of how to consume digital technology. I mean, there's lots of video to watch. There's a lot of news feeds to sort of flick around. You can even watch others play games. It's fantastic. I mean, I have so much I can do with all my free time. But what about turning it around? What about getting one of the things that this summer is going to happen is Minecraft in education. And I look at what kids are creating. We just recently launched something called Realms, which is a shared space for multiple kids to build their spaces and invite each other. And the creativity of that is just mind-boggling. Because Minecraft even has a physics engine built into it. It's not just about a virtual world. They're able to even build a computer as a virtual computer in Minecraft. And I look at that and say, wow, I think human beings are capable at the very core, and in fact, we want to be at the very core, the right balance between consumption and production. The next wave of innovation, I hope, that $500 billion or $1 trillion that Yuri is going to make next, comes from bets he places on companies that are turning all of us into makers, creators, and expressors. And I say that because...
As opposed to somebody who consumes and downloads a video stream, people who create and make products empowered by technology.
That's right. And and I say that because in some level that's who we are. I mean, I should sort of express that, because Microsoft, if you look at it, we think the best consumer product we ever created was Excel. Because think about it, people could make sense of numbers before, and now everybody can. I mean, think about a world without Excel. I mean, it's just impossible for me. But to me, that is, I mean, I love games too, but it is that sense of ability to express, create, make, build. After all, in fact, Bill dropped out of school to create the first product of our company, which was the basic interpreter. We are a tools company first, before a lot of other things we did. And I think and that is what I want the next 10 years of sort of our technology innovation to represent.
It was the vision that both Bill Gates and Steve Jobs shared, which is a company that will empower people to make things. And that's what you're now trying to return to with that.
Absolutely. I mean, that's, in fact, when I joined the company in '92, we used to talk about our mission as PC in every home and every desk. But to me, that, weirdly enough, we achieved at least that in the most developed world by end of the decade. And the thing that I've been trying to get back to is what is really the identity or the ethos behind what got us to build the PC, and that's the empowerment, the notion of empowering every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And to me, organizations matter because I think about institutions that human beings build so that it outlasts them as, in fact, a very important thing in society.
And with Microsoft, your choice as CEO, to become CEO, they finally took a product person. How, being a product person, did that change you versus being like Steve Ballmer, who was a marketing person? Or we go through many companies that have chosen finance, marketing, whatever. It would turn to the roots to have a product person leading the company. Is that right?
Yeah. That is definitely how I think. The thing that I would say, Walter, is the way as you described it, I'm a consummate insider. I mean, I've grown up at Microsoft. That's pretty much all my professional experience. And the thing that I've tried to do, as objectively as one can do being a consummate insider, is to try and look at it with a fresh set of eyes. And to be able to understand or rekindle what is it that drove success, what is it that drives our passion, and be able to bring that back in what is a very changed technology landscape. It's not about, the way I in fact think about it is like mission and sense of purpose is constant, and culture needs to be renewed, but technologies are always
And the biggest change in the technology landscape is what? The cloud, big data?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the way I even described it in the first piece of email I wrote was, we live in a world where computing is everywhere, it's ubiquitous, and intelligence is going to be ambient. And I sort of later on sort of made it simple for consumption, called it mobile first, cloud first. And what I mean by that is, it's the mobility of the human experience, because you want to be able to go from place to place and be able to have your applications, your data, your experience move with you versus being bound to any one computing device. In fact, I say the mistake we made was perhaps to think of PC as the hub for all things for all time to come. And I don't think that'll ever be the case. There'll be a period of time when one device is a high volume device, but computing itself is going to become more and more ubiquitous. And the cloud is the control plane. What enables that mobility is the cloud. And even cloud, people sometimes think about it too narrowly. It's not a destination, it's a new form of computing, which is going to be truly distributed.
And it will help sort of create the artificial intelligence in some ways that you've talked about. You said you wanted to have rules of the road, almost moral rules of the road. You mentioned Asimov. His first rule, if I remember correctly, you probably remember it, was that a computer can never do something to harm a human.
Yeah.
Is that true? Have we?
That's right. I think
have we violated that already?
I mean, that is the choice we get to make. I don't believe so. I mean, in fact, one of the fundamental examples I used in my piece, for example, was we have a deep learning network around computer vision that's being used by this one gentleman, in fact, who built it, who's visually impaired, to be able to see the world. In other words, he's interpreting. So this piece of equipment he wears on his eyes interprets the world because it sees the world and translates it for him.
Do you think a device like that could ever be programmed, I guess is the word, to have empathy?
Here's what I believe. I believe that we as programmers ultimately need to take accountability for even the automated judgments of machines. So if that makes any sense, because after all, we are designing them. We are designing them in ways that they are going to learn themselves, right? Because one of the fundamental things about artificial intelligence is you're not programming them, you're creating these learning systems. And these learning systems learn from data. But yet, I think one of the fundamental challenges we have in front of us is how can you have accountability?
One of Asimov's rules was that humans could always take back the power from the machines, which you've just described might violate that rule if they can learn and start doing things on their own.
But you should be able to. In fact, one of the things I wrote as one of the new rules that we need to have is humans should be able to address any unintended consequence of an autonomous decision.
Do you think that computers that learn that way may also pick up bias? And how do we stop that, if so?
And that is correct. And so therefore, one of the things that we ourselves have learned with our experiment with Tay was it learns from, in fact, human discourse. And if the human discourse has bias, you could, in fact, pick up those as signal. So that means we have to have the responsibility and accountability to design into the system how not to be able to fall into that trap of bias.
Give me an example.
Which is just like how we teach children. When you pick up a bad language at school, we come back, we teach them that, look, this is not the way to participate in society.
If you create, as you said, you have facial recognition, Will it know race, and will it make judgments based on race?
In fact, I would say it should not make judgments based on race. It should, in fact, be able to recognize race, but it's not about passing judgment on race. So that's where I think even the diversity of the team designing the artificial intelligence that is passing that judgment needs to be, in place.
It's possible that this type of robotics and technology will either increase or decrease inequality in society. Do you think it's the job of people like yourself creating this technology to push towards the side of making it more equitable and promoting equality?
I think we don't have a long-term business if we do not address the inequities. That's why I go back to what I said, which is, let's say, I was in Egypt at the very beginning of the year. We talk about our, immigration issues and what are we doing in the refugee camps and what have you. But the real challenge of immigration is right in the Arab world. And be able to contribute to that challenge by saying, okay, what is the level of education being afforded to students in refugee camps in Egypt? What could we help and do is a super important thing for us. Because if we as a company do not take that extra step, going beyond our immediate term revenues, long term, we're not going to have a business in Egypt or let alone any other country. So I think that that's one of the multi-constituent things, quite frankly, I've come to realize as a CEO, a lot more than even one step removed. But just saying, being victims of just short-term capitalism is just not going to be a way to, in fact, build a long-term business.
I think we can announce something today, which is you finally have gotten a book deal. Those of us who write books think that's a big deal. And I think today you're going to announce that I think HarperCollins is doing a book, and it's called Hit Reset. Tell me, it's partly about yourself, but it's partly about how all of us have to hit reset, right?
I think it's hit refresh.
Hit refresh, right. I need to reset, you need to refresh. Yeah, hit refresh.
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, I've not written it. It's just the book deal. I'm told you do the deal first and then you start writing. I hope that's the way it works. It's really more of a book that I hope to write, which is meditations of somebody who's a sitting CEO of a company going through a pretty cathartic transformation. It's a moment in time where there is a lot of change with us, there is change in the industry, there is change in the society, and navigating it. Because I felt like one of the things that I think a lot about it all the time, and I felt I want to write about it as I'm going through it. It's not a memoir, it's definitely not about something that's a finished project. It's very much the trials and tribulations of a person going through transformation, which is the hardest thing.
Well, let me end with this, which is more personal, because in some ways, going through the transformation you've done. In many ways, you've led an incredibly typical American life. You were born in Hyderabad, India. You went to Bangalore. Then I think you got your electrical engineering master's degree, University of Wisconsin. You come here. Tell us what your own personal journey as an immigrant, but also somebody who became a great engineer in America, spent 24 years at Microsoft, how that ties in to refreshing Microsoft and even refreshing us as an American society.
It's fascinating. I remember the first computer I got was a Spectrum Z80 when I was probably in 9th grade, 10th grade. That was the first time I got a computer to play with, and it had a basic interpreter. And I think about, I wouldn't be in Microsoft, I wouldn't be in the United States but for Microsoft. And it's pretty ironic in that way, in the sense that it's the American ingenuity, innovation that in fact reached and touched me in growing up in India. And then the immigration policy of this country that let me come here and then live my life here. And so I feel very blessed on both fronts. That's why I think that this is an amazing country. I'm always optimistic and bullish about what the United States and what the United States is capable of doing and what the United States means to the world. But the thing that perhaps that most strikes me, having grown up in India, is even the brands that I grew up with, many of them multinational. I always could make the difference between companies that were there contributing to the country, to the people of that country, and companies that were just collecting. And I hope that that sensibility is something that I have now, being a CEO of a multinational company in a country like the United States, which I think has to be not only innovating, but creating economic opportunity everywhere.
Satya Nadella, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.